ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. And for episode 50, I have a special announcement for everyone.
Do tell.
Coming to Steam in 2020, I'd like to announce the GLORIO Blog VR Edition.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you'll be able to choose your favorite GLORIO crew member and watch, or simulate watching any of the anime we covered in 2012.
Oh God!
Oh man, I can't wait to.
I would not wish that on any man.
I can't wait for people, thousands of people, to watch me virtually
millions.
sleep or
watch
virtually complain about mecha anime.
Chocolate.
Oh, I was literally about to say Love, Election, and Chocolate.
We'll have faithfully recreated backgrounds like my home office, or if you're playing multiplayer mode, Iroh's house.
I'd sit in the same fucking spot I do as I did then, so...
I think I have actually moved to a different desk, so we'll include that in the expansion pack later. But clear. I mean, obviously I wrote that. I was thinking of that when the Half-Life announcement came out, but then Nerd News got dominated by the Cybertruck thing, and I was like, should we do a Cybertruck joke?
There's a lot of potential bits you could have gone with. Like, I was half expecting Pokemon.
We're going to talk a lot about Pokemon, so... But the Cybertruck thing was just like... I could not write anything funnier than what actually happened.
Oh, no, real life
it was amazing.
Real life is greater than fiction sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so... Anyway, this being an anime podcast, let's move along into talking about anime, but we'll introduce everybody first. I'm Jel, and this episode I am joined by Iroh.
Hello, I'm still here.
Still here. And G.
Yo, yo.
And we have Marlon this week.
Hey, I'm back.
He's back. So yeah, we've got... Like we said, we've got some Pokemon stuff to talk about, a couple other shows to catch up on, and then we'll get to our regularly scheduled episode coverage on a couple of the other shows. And we'll start off with we had the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield about a week ago now. And there was, of course, a little bit of, I guess, quote-unquote controversy with this particular Pokemon. First, with the announcement that, they're not going to have the full Pokédex in there, so there's not going to have all the Pokemon available. And then, later on, when the review embargoes broke, some people had a few complaints about some of the performance issues on the game or something like that. But despite all that, the game still broke records. It was the highest selling Pokemon opening of all time, with like 6 billion copies in the first couple days or something like that. Which, for reference, the last game, which was like the Pikachu Eevee one, I forget the exact title.
Let's Go Pikachu.
Yeah, that's apparently only sold 1.5 million copies in the first 2 weeks.
Really?
So this completely crushed that and was the highest selling Pokemon. I don't think any of us have played it yet, but it still looks pretty good.
I'm thinking about getting it, but I've not pulled the trigger.
I saw one video that the one thing that's rough is they have like this multiplayer area where like you can see other people and there's like Pokemon just kind of wandering around, and that's where it seems like things really hitch up. And it just doesn't seem like it's built for that kind of stress.
It seems like the network features...
I mean, for better or worse, what it looks like is a developer's first attempt at doing an open world, and unlike the Breath of the Wild team, it feels like Game Freak was not really looking at their contemporaries in terms of what to take inspiration or advice from.
A fair amount of help from Monolith Soft, is my understanding.
Well...
Yes.
That still does not explain the very kind of blatant performance issues that have definitely been.
And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's so ugly. Like, it doesn't look very high detail.
Fine.
It's not a looker.
But then again,
relative to
Breath of the Wild,
that's not really necessarily a fair comparison.
Fine.
Yeah, I think
I get what Marlon is saying.
Yes, I get what you're saying.
you compare it to other like games of a similar like attempt at that scope and scale, like Breath of the Wild, like Xenoblade 2.
Like, this is a game released on the most advanced console that Nintendo has, and it looks like that. That just like, I know Nintendo's always behind everyone else, but like,
I don't think it's even as much Nintendo as it is Game Freak, if we want to be, honest here.
Yeah.
I think that Nintendo in general has always been pretty good at getting decent. You look at like stuff like Splatoon or Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. Nintendo, like first party Nintendo, they generally know how to get they know how to squeeze blood from a stone. I'm not sure I would ascribe those same qualities to Game Freak, who are the actual developers of the Pokemon games.
Right.
I think it's an interesting discussion because on the one hand, I do feel there was a lot of, reactionary gamer overreaction to some of the shortcomings of the game, but on the other hand, there are definitely shortcomings to the game that should be, rightfully pointed out. So, like, there's a balance there, I guess, that is,
it will
always a fun time to try to find balance in video game discussion on the internet.
It definitely, it's really unfortunate that like the discussion of Sword and Shield immediately jumped into its most like toxic logical extreme, because it really does, I think, muddy the waters of like what I think could be a legitimate discussion about. This franchise makes more money than literally any other franchise on the planet.
Yeah.
Like if Disney released a product of the same quality as Pokemon Sword and Shield, people would be raking that over the coals. But
I don't know.
They would be, but they'd still buy it. It's the same
right?
problem.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, if we want to get to the core of it, it's like, look, I have my criticisms of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, if I'm being super duper honest, like, it's a dumb, petty reason, but I legitimately did not pick up Sword and Shield because of some of the dex cuts. Like, too many of my favorites got lost in the shuffle. But that said, even the most cynical of us Pokemon fans had zero illusion that any of this hubbub would have, like, any effect on sales.
Right.
I don't think it's unreasonable to say that Game Freak is... Lazy is not the right word. I don't want to call game developers lazy, but...
They're cutting corners to get a game out every year and a half or whatever it is.
Game Freak tends to be a studio that takes the path of least resistance, and largely they have been rewarded for it. And as a result... I think most Pokemon fans, like, of course you have the most delusional toxic types, poison types that are like, oh man, I hope Pokemon fails, but realistically, none of us actually thought, a drop in quality was going to be what kills Pokemon. Like, if a drop in quality of the games was going to kill Pokemon, it would have killed Pokemon back during Diamond and Pearl. If something ever does, like...
I don't know if it's the same to, like... I mean, it wasn't great, but Diamond and Pearl wasn't...
Oh, Diamond and Pearl is a real low point.
To be fair, that's the last one I played, so...
I think it's kind of apt, like, people pointed out, and I think there's some truth to this, that, like, the first Pokemon on each new console basically kind of suffers from these same types of growing pains.
You look at X and Y.
Right,
like...
X and Y, Diamond and Pearl, like, even... depending on who you ask, Ruby and Sapphire.
Oh yeah, totally. People have
all have these same kinds of issues of being a little feature poor and like just not quite as polished as people might like, or like not quite as polished as people come to expect from the most previous one. Like.
No, totally.
Yeah, so maybe the next Switch Pokemon will be really good, right?
Right, when they release like Pokemon Gun, that will be the version to pick
It'd be
up.
Spear, right? Like,
but well, that's the thing is, I'm not even sure they're going to even do that. Because
they won't. But
everybody thought they were
ever since Black and White, they've just done numbered double sequels or whatever.
Right, which is kind of a shame because I think that. You ask a lot of people, and, like, if you say, like, what's your favorite Pokemon of all time, for, like, really long-time fans, they will say either Platinum or Black 2/White 2, just because of, like, how fully featured those were, so...
Right.
It is a shame if they don't really do those kind of sequel releases anymore. But
I'm just also kind of not super interested in the the kind of culture they're like aping from in this.
You heard it here first. Marlon hates the British.
I'm just saying, it's like but it's not even like fully British. Like it just
Glory,
seems like
GLORIO USA represent.
Well, because it's not actually, it's fake anime Britain. So.
I mean, I think it's also just the fact that it's not even that. I mean, I think some of the set dressing is very British, but like the Pokemon themselves, like, there are a couple, right? Like you got the like, T-Ghost and Mr. Rhyme.
You got Yampers, but like, what does that really do in the end? You got a sheep.
Yeah. I'm into that part.
I will hear nothing bad about Wooloo.
Give me Poca Italy.
Hey, sure, why not? I will continue to like say on record. I think they should do Pokemon Mexico. I think not Mexico
that would be cool.
Would be a very cool region. Think of all the fucking skull-based Pokemon we could get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. Well, I think going to fake anime Britain after fake anime Hawaii is a good contrast, and then after maybe the next one we could do something Mediterranean or South American or something like that. That would to keep kind of mixing it up. But anyway,
speaking of Pokemon, the new anime series has also begun to coincide with the new games.
Yes, and so how did that go? I already saw the first
I watched
episode,
the first
right?
episode, which is all flashback type stuff, kind of easing into the new status quo, which is not all that different from the old status quo. But it's an episode about before Pikachu was at Professor Oak's lab, Pikachu's time as a Pichu,
really
the forbidden lore.
Huh.
Really?
The stuff you never knew about Pikachu's past.
Is this more of like a Star Wars prequel kind of thing?
Yeah, I was gonna say
it was just the one episode. It was just the one episode.
We were literally just talking about Disney. I feel like the worst thing you could do with Pokemon is like
it was just the one episode.
Explore the backstory that led to
the
iconic events of the
this
original
whole
anime.
Episode about Pichu, being on its own and being adopted by a kindly Kangaskhan family. Because Kangaskhan's good at taking care of babies.
And then what the Kangaskhan got
Pokemon? Was it like
no
Pika?
subtitles.
And then the Kangaskhan got killed by a Fearow, and that's why Pikachu wants revenge.
No,
wasn't that a real episode of Pokemon in the first season?
I don't think so. What?
I thought that there was like a season or like an episode where they go to the Safari Zone and like maybe it doesn't die.
I never saw that episode.
I don't know.
But
there's a lot of Pokemon episodes.
That's true.
As Pichu grows larger, it's harder for Kangaskhan to take care of baby Kangaskhan and a Pichu simultaneously.
Hey man, being a single mother is tough.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
when they meet up with the Chansey clan, and the Chansey clan, gives them their eggs. How you split this egg between baby Kangaskhan and Pichu?
Well, you could ask for a second egg as a fucking Chansey.
I don't know. Let's just meet the family of Chanseys and give them eggs. Anyway,
its fucking iconic move is called soft boiled.
Yes, just break it in half. So Pichu one night sneaks away and leaves because it cannot bear to see Kangaskhan having such trouble trying to raise two children. But its feelings of friendship towards the Kangaskhan that raised it allow it to evolve into Pikachu.
Okay.
That's how Pichu evolves. Pichu evolves with high friendship.
I know.
I
haven't forgot that part.
So,
anyway.
Okay.
So how is the anime like? I don't know. Is it just or more specifically, we have heard from you and others in the chat time and time again about how good Pokemon Sun and Moon are and how it should be in our top 10 list every year it airs.
Good.
But what is the vibe you get from the new one? Does it feel like it is a continuation of that Sun-Moon sensibility, or does it feel more like a return to the quote-unquote traditional Pokemon anime?
It's hard to say from what I've seen. I would like to think they learned some lessons from Sun and Moon, just of making it more interesting than always town/person of the week, by having a more central cast and such.
But this was just basically a setup episode, so it's kind of hard to say. Right?
my understanding is it will be a more episodic of going to various other regions. It's not all in Galar. Like, I think home base is going to be like Vermilion City or something.
Huh.
I did see something like
Vermilion City.
Yeah, because there's ships that go places, I think.
I guess just like, that's weird, because then it's like... Because then me, the lifetime fan of Pokemon, I'm like, well, does that mean Lieutenant Surge is a recurring character? Because, like, if I was making a Pokemon anime based
go
in
hang out with Lieutenant
City,
Surge.
I just go get drinks, get a beer with Lieutenant Surge. He could tell me about all the war crimes he committed with his
I was going to say, he
right.
probably got arrested for war crimes at this point.
Fucking get him going into some PTSD flashbacks about, do you know what a thunderbolt does to a man's skin or something?
Jesus.
Peels like an orange.
Jesus Christ.
I drink to keep the shocks away.
All I saw was this week's episode is going to be like almost a Pokemon Go tie-in of we're having a raid against Lugia or something.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this.
We did confirm this is continuing. There's like a sequel from
it's not a reboot,
and not.
I mean, it's much of a reboot as going to the next gen.
I mean, it is as much of a reboot as Ash is like Samus, but does it on purpose and loses all his Pokemon
he left
before
all
the next adventure.
He left all his Alolan Pokemon with Professor Kukui in the last episode.
I never get that, because it's like, oh, we're the best friends, but I'm going to abandon you the moment I need to leave. Like,
I suppose it at least
is more honest, because it treats them like pets.
Sure.
That's more like what they actually are.
I will say, like, the main disappointment I had with Sun and Moon was that when it was time for the Pokemon League, because when I was a kid, I always looked forward to Pokemon League because it was an excuse to bring back his old Pokemon, right?
Oh, yeah,
right.
Bring back Kingler, baby.
But Alolan League, he just used the Alolan Pokemon.
What, Kingler didn't come in for the last-minute save like he always has?
I wish, dude.
Wait, like he couldn't even use Pikachu?
Oh, he used Pikachu.
Well, he had
No.
Pikachu,
Of
right?
course he used Pikachu. But, like...
Wait, he didn't bring back his herd of Taurus or whatever?
No.
Charizard didn't come back
fun.
for the 50th fucking time.
I think that was in the episode where someone tried to kill a Kangaskhan. Oh,
what?
Bringing this full circle.
Anyway, I think I still really like the art style that, like, it's not exactly the same as Sun and Moon looked, but it's kind of got sort of the same vibe. It's a little, like, cartoonier, more expressive.
That's cool.
Right. Yes, that's good.
I mean, I know that art style had a lot of haters for some reason. I don't understand why, but I still think it looks good.
Yeah.
I think they've been bringing in more freelance, like notable freelance animators for here and there.
Yeah, I have heard about it. I think that is a neat thing to do, especially for such a long-running show, because that kind of gives freelance animators a chance to kind of shine, kind of flex their skills.
Right. And, like, Pokemon is the most known quantity of known quantities at this point.
Right. I think that's a pretty neat thing to do. Like, I feel like Pokemon might not be my kids' anime of choice, but there are certainly other kids' anime out there I like.
Like Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise.
Yes, that if that had, like, recurring freelance animators could be pretty interesting.
Well, speaking of good animation, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Fine.
Let's catch up on a few other things here.
But yeah, Pokemon's good.
Pokemon is good.
Jigglypuff lives.
Iro, did you want to?
Yeah, so I've still been watching Fate Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front Babylonia.
Yes.
Why?
How many Medusas are we up to?
2 at least.
At least 2.
I mean, they're trying
maybe
to
3?
be. It's a weird thing of like it's weird to me when the plot's trying to be coy about these people's true identities still, when, like, the game itself is not at all obfuscating their true identities, on status screens and shit.
When was the last time that the true identities thing even mattered in Fate?
Like Fate Zero, maybe? Because
all of Fate Go's appeal is, like, not Lancer, it's this specific figure.
Right. So, So, a character who they call Anna for some reason, but who everybody knows is, like, little girl Medusa, is a main character. And then also another version, like full Gorgon monster Medusa showed up, and they spent an episode calling her Tiamat because they're in Babylon. But then, like, we all know it's not Tiamat, right? Like, and so it's just weird to me, like, that kind of plot thing of, it's almost like if we were actually doing a plot in Babylon, we would need to have this figure from Babylonian myth, but these characters are not actually in the game in any form.
Since those characters don't exist yet.
Right, so we'll get like something that we can turn into a close approximation and then hand wave away as this person was summoned because they're kind of like this other person-ish or whatever. And it's just really
that one's a bit of a stretch.
Right. Anyway, that show looks really good.
Yeah.
The last episode where they're fighting Giant Gorgon Medusa, and like Ushiwakamaru is running around and cutting up snakes for like 5 minutes straight, and it looks really cool.
I haven't,
but
seen
I just
that
don't
clip
care
yet.
about these characters. And I'm like, man, this would be cool if I cared about these people.
Now, let me do a thought experiment here.
Uh-huh.
Now, imagine our heroes were sent to ancient Babylonia to discover the mysteries of the absolute demonic front.
Sure, yes.
But instead of the characters we are currently watching, what if instead it was a surly English professor known as Lord El Meloy II,
Okay.
and his faithful ward, Gray.
Yeah.
And they were here to, because somehow coming to ancient Babylonia would allow them to solve the key to a murder mystery.
I'd be way more into that, rather than watching, Ushiwakamaru run around in her, like, fucking stripper outfit.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay.
You just keep
Ushiwakamaru
saying that name.
is the name of one Minamoto no Yoshitsune
Okay,
before
I'm
he
good.
became Yoshitsune.
Why is he in Babylonia?
Don't ask me.
We don't have time for that on
I
this
guess
podcast.
Gilgamesh summoned some servants for some reason.
Oh, okay.
I don't fucking know. Leonidas was also there, and he got turned to stone.
Gilgamesh can summon servants?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he do
Sure.
that in the original Fate Stay Night then?
Because he was an archer, not a cat.
So,
I
speaking
see we're
of...
causing Eero physical pain now.
Yeah, so
really, they should just again give that money to Grand Blue Fantasy, which looked worse than ever this week.
Like,
but...
I just I miss when Fate was good.
Well, Eero, Fate was good.
I know it was. You're right. I shouldn't complain. I got my weird spit-off that understood what I liked.
That had no right being as decent as it was, considering the amount
Whatever.
of bullshit it was
It
trading.
had Luvia suplexing robots.
Yes.
That was
Well,
cool.
speaking of legacy franchises that continue to disappoint us,
Yes.
we don't need
more
to spend too much
disappointment.
time on this, but we're still watching Gundam Build Divers, and that show continues to do the thing of introducing concepts about a Gundam-based MMO that seem genuinely interesting and captivating, and then the show proceeds to do absolutely nothing with them, instead focusing on its least interesting elements.
Yes. That's basically it. Like, let us... Okay, we've played about this before in the podcast, so the plot itself is this weird isekai adjace. Like, we're logging into this MMO and then going to this, like, side zone that's full of furries and doing missions for the furries.
What?
And, like, has nothing to do with Gundam whatsoever.
Right, like,
But
no,
then-
like, this is not like some weird deep cut, right? This is not like, so, in some Gundam spin-off there was a furry village or something. Like,
No. It's literally like, how can we make this isekai? But then, like, of course, because they still have this framing device of being in a Gundam MMO, like, once or twice an episode, we will get, like, a minute inside of the MMO part before they go to the furry area. And it's like, and then they'll, like, make some reference to something happening in the Gundam MMO, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I want to see that. I want to see the Alboa Ku raid. Like, I want to see it.
Yeah, I want to see the Devil Gundam raid.
What are the missions? Yeah, what are the missions in the Gundam MMO? Is the pinnacle PvP activity the Gundam fight from G Gundam?
Yeah, there's
cool.
as always.
Is there where do we grind the most? Is it on against the Big Zam? What do we do?
Right, what's a good place to farm for XP?
I want to know. Or even the last episode that where it's just pseudo a focus episode on the girl and the main crew. They spend 30 seconds of her walking through the lobby and looking at other parties, and for a hot second you think it's gonna talk about being a hot girl in your dumb Gundam video game or whatever. They gesture towards the possibility of bringing that up,
right?
And then ignore it, and I'm you're showing that you see these vectors towards an interesting story, and you're just not taking them.
The thing is that it would be worse if the show was actively ignorant of good ideas, because the concept of an MMO that is deeply steeped in the very long history of the Gundam franchise has a lot of potential for very interesting things, but it's almost even worse that the show displays that it is aware of these things and then actively chooses not to engage with them. And that's what makes it frustrating. And you know what? Frankly, 3 minutes is already 3 minutes too many for Gundam Build Divers, so we should just move on.
Right. Tell us about the show only you've been watching, Marlon.
Let's make a hard cut.
How hard are they slapping those cards?
Man, super hard. So I didn't realize things were kind of really rampant.
First, let's say what the show is.
Yes.
So this is Chihayafuru. It's the game about competitive card slapping, as Hiro alluded to. So I don't know why, but you know how it started episode 1 in week 3. Well, they then proceeded to release 2 episodes the next 2 weeks, so now it's caught up, which makes me question why they decided to release it late in the first place. But
I wonder if there was some other event on that channel or something.
Could be.
A number of shows have been delayed a week or two.
Maybe it was on the same channel as the Rugby World Finals or something like that.
Maybe, you're right. Stuff was delayed for that. Stuff was delayed for some sort of marathon / relay race or Paralympics coverage, etc.
Right. It worked out perfectly because there was this entire tournament arc that happened just in the episodes since we last started the show, which it was really nice because it's one of those tournaments where it's 0 stakes. The only thing is you win the tournament, you get the prestige of having won a tournament, and so it's low stakes in that nobody loses anything. They're not losing a high school tournament, or they're not losing the big championship. But there's
the rec center isn't going to get taken over by the evil millionaire
exactly
at the end of this tournament.
So it allows these more personal fights. So in Chihayafuru, there's the girl Chihaya, she's the main character, and then there's I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but there's this guy, they call him Eyebrows. I don't know why. I guess he has nice eyebrows. It's really weird.
He has nice eyebrows.
Usually
it goes the other way around.
Right. Or no, it's eyelashes, sorry. Because he has eyelashes like a pretty male model or something like that.
I see.
That's it. And so
this made me think of Tiger and Bunny, but
they're both in. So it's weird. It's so in the Karuta universe. This is the card game. There's societies that you join, and so it's you're in a club. And so in this tournament, you specifically don't play against the other people until the very end that are in your own club. So it's a club versus club fight, and you get to see the show. Kind of revolves around 3 characters, because then there's this other guy named Arata who lives in Fukui, which is actually where Artemis lived. It's this super rural kind of bumpkin town and or area. And so he's also at this, and they're kind of really going at it, and unfortunately him and the other 2 don't play each other, but they go all the way to the end, and Chihaya plays, I don't know why I keep forgetting his name, Eyelashes, in the final fight. And it's they've been building up for a while that they've been friends for so long that they haven't really had a serious match together because they're always, on a team together.
It's always like casual, or they're
playing, like they're not playing at 100% because they're just playing in practices, or like one's been kind of the guy has been trailing behind her for so long, but now they're finally in the same class together, so they can play together.
It's like Goku and Vegeta squaring off for real.
And so it was like really tense, and you can see like it's kind of interesting because the guy, he's a main character, but he's a sore loser. So when he loses, you can kind of see he has this like bratty side that really it feels very realistic because reminding me of my own times in the chess club. Like I loved being in that chess club, but if you caught me after a bad loss, like I could just be the worst. And it was really cool to see how much so he plays her, and Chihaya has just gotten so good. Like she actually had to beat a former champion in this tournament. It's like she went on maternity leave and came back. So
Wait, what?
Yeah, so
Chihaya or the champion?
The champion. Okay, so
I was like, whoa, this show's got way more depth than I thought.
No.
Pregnancy.
So Chihaya is just a high school girl. She had the broken finger. I think I talked about that.
Right.
And so now she has her fingers all healed. She's like at 100% strength. And so one of the matches she had was against a former champion who stopped playing the sport after she got pregnant. Because I imagine this game actually be the hardest because you have to be kneeling the whole time, and so not exactly the easiest position to be in while being pregnant.
Just raise the table.
No, you're just on the ground.
I know. Like, never mind. What if we play Karate on a table?
Well,
then it wouldn't be the traditional.
Yeah, then you're ruining the purity of the sport.
The purity of the game, etc.
So he loses, and it's actually this really cool thing that they're doing. They're setting up him being a little bratty about it, and like she actually was skipping out on playing for the championship this year because it was at the same time as her school trip, and she wants to be with her friends and she wants to like make some memories together before she leaves school. But he decides to skip the trip to go to the championship, and so there's like this new drama of he's just going off on his own. Like, he's usually not a radical, but he's just now totally going off on his own. And,
not a radical, like skipping school trips to go to card slapping
this
tournaments.
Is a very low stakes show where nobody does anything bad. So this isn't March comes in like a lion. You're not going to get.
Is that just like showing her up basically? Because
basically
she's not going to be there.
Well, like he's basically trying to get one up on her so that he can finally eventually beat her. Because he kind of has resented this. Yeah.
So and again, like Goku and Vegeta.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if resent's the right word, but like he's just always felt a little inadequate in that respect.
Right.
They also have been. One of the things I find really weird is that I get they're trying to be realistic, but Arata, his voice actor is so strange, and I think that's because they're trying to do the regional dialect of this town because everybody sounds the same, but it makes it sound like everyone has like a cold every time they speak because it's like I cannot emulate it, but it just is bizarre.
I mean, it probably just sounds different to like what is, it's kind of like how in America, entertainment media has a very specific like dialect and accent, right? Like the Hollywood
everyone
American
sounds like they're from California.
Your Hollywood,
like I said,
Los Angeles.
I'm assuming in Japan they probably have something similar, and that's why when a regional dialect does show up, even to those of us who aren't speakers, we've watched enough anime that something like that sticks out.
Yeah, and I guess, like I said, it's supposed to be kind of a country bumpkin sort of accent.
Well, it's like you always have to have like your token like Kansai accent characters.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
But yeah, so it was 6 episodes, so it's a lot to talk about all at once. But I'm still really enjoying it. It's it's exactly what I signed up for, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Like if Chihaya is going to somehow like just run away and try and get to the championship. I don't know if she already can't. It's like already too late. But it'll be interesting to see how this changes the dynamic between those two characters.
Based on the setup you've given us, I'd be disappointed if she didn't play him again in the thing. But
this is the thing,
maybe they want to tell us that that your friends are more important or something. I don't know.
So it's kind of weird. These tournaments are mixed gender, but the championships are just men and women. so they can't play each other in the championship. So like, because you become like a master and queen, they call it. I think it's just a Japanese.
All right, sure.
Okay.
Like I think they do the same thing.
I was gonna say I don't know if card slapping is like that physically strenuous. You need gender divides there. But
yeah,
hey, it's
I'm
Japan,
assuming it's
so
some
I believe
Japanese
it.
thing. They're
Yeah,
like,
well,
we must divide the women from the men for this.
Well,
I know my sister always beat me at speed card games, so I don't know. But
I mean,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to give us an update about that. I don't know, a month or two from now, when Eyelashes has made a deal with Bobbity for unlimited power and the removal of his morality to allow him to ascend to a new level of power in card slapping to defeat Chihaya.
And then when Chihaya goes even further beyond.
Yes.
Well, speaking of removal of morality, can we work on that one for?
Actually,
no, that'll work.
Some interesting stuff happens regarding morality.
I can make that work. Yes.
We wanted to take some. You guys mentioned last episode that you'd have some things to talk about in Vinland Saga this episode. So did that happen?
Yes. Speaking of a newfound reckoning with morality.
Yes.
There was an episode of Vinland Saga that aired, and this is kind of one of the big moments I've really been waiting for in this anime adaptation. Like the backdrop of it is that the main character, or nominally the main character, despite his outstanding lack of screen time, Thorfinn, challenges the cartoon, like, Asterix tier Viking made real Thorkel in a duel. And during that, another character, Prince Canute, based off of the very real Danish king Canute, has a sort of moral reckoning about his place in the universe and his relationship with God. And I try not to spoil anything. I try to make it sound like, I'm really looking forward to the Viking axe murder during this episode. But the thing that's really actually, I think what really makes Vinland Saga stand out as, one of those, like, big name seinen series is Canute's kind of internal dialogue in this episode, where essentially he has, a pseudo dream conversation with his recently deceased companion Ragnar, and then talks to the Christian priest Willibald, kind of about the nature of love and God's grace, and kind of really gets in this idea that, like, not that I agree with it, but this idea that is mankind actually capable of love if their form of love is, like, quantitative and discriminatory, right? Like, can you really say you have love in your heart if you only love, like, can you really say
you're
you
only
love
protecting your family over other people?
Right, like, can you say you love people if you love these people, but these other people you're fine with being, butchered and slaughtered? Can you?
Not even like
case,
fine, not even like fine with them being slaughtered, but like you will protect one person over another person.
Right. Like, is that love? If it is not, if your love is not unconditional, then is it love? Is it compassion for your fellow man? And I think it's a really great moment. I think it really gets into, like, what Vinland Saga does the best, which is kind of really get into, like, it is ostensibly about Vikings and axe murder, but it is also about the introduction of this new and strange religion with its new and strange ideals and beliefs, and how they interact with a formerly pagan society very much built around this cycle of, like, toxic masculine vengeance cycles and grudges, and the societal developments that occur as a result of those new ideas being introduced.
I mean, yeah, I found it interesting. Like, obviously you can tell the priest is intended to be portrayed somewhat as, like, not like a, is a kook the right word? Like he's not all together.
I mean,
well, he has moments of lucidity, but, like, he's got an interesting outlook on things. And I find, like you said, the idea of the discussion of love was very interesting, because it does kind of talk about what we would say is the difference between, like God's love and human love, that it can never be the same. And it's kind of right, that like we're always, because of, we would call it original sin, drawn into this like darkness, or like this idea of preference. And what I found really cool was his idea of like seeing the beauty in nature, as really starting to understand the dichotomy between like the beauty of nature and the ugliness of what men were doing around him.
Right. I mean, there's definitely that idea of like, oh, animals or nature like are devoid of sin or blah 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 because they are without the things that like taint the human soul and all that. And I mean, again, like the reason I like this scene is because, like, I mean, here's the thing: we're talking very big about this, but like at its core, what this scene is the thing I think every anime fan loves of the character who is like a coward and a weakling, like fucking sacking up and getting their shit together.
Yeah, there's
because the whole point of this internal monologue is that Canute basically comes to the realization that, like, what's that phrase, like, God's will is what we make of it or whatever, like. Canute basically arrives at the conclusion that, you know, if God put us on such in such an uncaring world filled with such uncaring people, then it is up to us to turn it into the paradise that we deserve. And, you know, this character who up till now has been portrayed as like a weakling and a coward and very effeminate, and to an extent he is still many of those things, but this episode is the beginning of his turn towards towards kingship, towards becoming the king that he famously becomes in our own real world history.
And I do like that it's like he's not making this realization of like courage and not becoming callous afterwards. Like the first thing he does with his courage is calm down. I forget the guy's name, but
Bjorn,
the berserker.
Yeah.
And so, like, he still is, clinging on to his compassion, like you said, trying to make it the best he can, but he's no longer going to be timid and, like, think that compassion is in avoiding the tough decisions. Whereas it seems...
I mean, this all sounds like the stuff you were talking about, G, in the beginning, when we first started talking about the show.
It does bear mentioning that, like, the other half of this episode is a man swinging around axes.
I mean, yes,
smashing the ground,
in the air.
You know,
right? Like, let it be
kicking
said
a child like 100 feet into the air.
Right, like, let it be said that in the episode prior to this, a man punched a horse to death with his bare hands, and then kicked a child like 100 feet in the air. So...
Right. So before we get too high-minded here,
right? I mean, Vinland Saga is a multifaceted work.
Right.
Look, I just read the Book of Judges. You know what Samson does with the jawbone of an ass?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's I think, but I think the fact that in the midst of all of that, you know, violence and nonsense and whatnot, like that they're, you know, willing to bring up those kinds of questions. That's what takes something like this and elevates it to, you know, another level, right? Like, it's not just
right. I mean,
let's watch, you know, these cool Viking acts.
Yeah, I think it is that quality that has always put Vinland Saga above the berserks and such. You know, it's what could be considered its seinen contemporaries.
Right. So, and is that's just so that's just continuing this season, right?
I think it should be ending this season. Yes.
Okay. Do they have a good stopping point, G, that you think?
They definitely do. It's gonna be a little bit of a rush to it, but I think they are going to have to finish there because it is the most thematically appropriate place to end things.
All right. Well, we will check back in with that later. Okay. Let's move along to our regularly scheduled episode coverage. So, we'll start by talking about Stars Align, episodes 6 and 7, which were almost all entirely the big match with the really good championship school, whatever.
Yes, it turned into a standard sports anime.
Peak sports anime for this show. I don't know if there's too much to say about episode 6 because it goes exactly the way you'd expect it to.
Right.
Yeah.
And really, the entire match really is just like we all kind of expected. They'd come in, they'd bloody their noses a bit and get some confidence, but in the end, the good team is going to beat them.
Yes, episodes. I mean, I think if nothing else, I think that episodes 6 and 7 are good because they are doing the things I was hoping this show would do of, like, establishing a baseline power level that our heroes need to strive for. Right. Like we needed to be reminded that, like, yes, they are making huge strides and gains in the past, like, month or so, but, like, compared to people who have been doing this their whole life or, you know, whatever, like, they still have a long way to go. But also...
that still just really makes it hard to swallow. Like, the idea that, yeah, there's this ace on their team, no matter how bad his teamwork is, that this kid... who's only been, like, he literally says, yeah, I've just been playing tennis for a month. He still hasn't, like, you know, as much as Joel has wanted to say maybe he's still hiding something, he's still not coughing up.
I mean, I think with episode 7, they have definitely put that theory to rest.
Yeah. No, he definitely, that's done.
And so, like, but it does make it seem so undeserved and so just hard to take that he's playing for a month and he goes toe-to-toe and he goes to a break point with
I mean,
with a guy
it's definitely that issue of, like, here's the thing, this storyline has existed in sports fiction period for, like, since time immemorial, right? Like the classic Rocky going the distance with Apollo Creed. Mm-hmm. I think the issue there is that, like, in Rocky's case, you know, he wasn't a very good boxer, but he was a boxer, had been doing it for years.
Yeah, like he went the distance, but he got the crap kicked out of him. Like, he clearly lost the fight.
Whereas
he put in a lot of work.
Yes, and he put in a ton of work, but I think the issue with, like, Stars Align is maybe... Here's the thing, I actually don't mind episode 6 where it is, like... I think the vibe of episode 6 for me is, like, okay, our kids are going up against, like, the second and third stringers of the ace team. And, like, the fact that they are managing to, like, get them to sweat a little bit is, like, I think that works, right?
Right.
I think that part works with, oh, you're going up against our second and third stringers, and you managed to take a game from us. Like, that's not insignificant, right? Like, that's not nothing. I think where it begins to fall apart is when, Maki and Toma, like, legitimately push what was supposedly their best player, their champion, like, to the brink.
Right.
And...
Right.
That's where I maybe kind of that was a stretch.
That like Marlon said, you know, A, there's no way a kid who's only been playing a month is going to be that good, and B, there's no way their teamwork would have been that bad that they could have exploited it, and they would have, you know, because these players, like, won a championship or something, like, right? Like they said earlier, like, they have, like, game experience, like any, like, that would have been exposed a lot earlier,
right? Like, it would not have, like,
that much of a problem,
right? Like, Maki would not have been the person to expose that weakness if these people had really been playing against other players of their level for, like, years now, because other players should have ostensibly also
So I think that match in particular was a little bit of a stretch, and I agree, G. The stuff in episode 6 actually worked pretty well.
I did like the episode 6 stuff. I think it was fun, you know, like, obviously, like, the matches were, like, it was fun because these kids were not winning on pure skill. They were winning on exploiting either the weaknesses of their opponents or leaning into their own goofy, weird strengths.
Yeah, I'll give
it. And then and then once it got figured out, then they lost, which is the way it should have.
Right.
Which I think is good because, like, in terms of sports anime, like, it is good to have gimmicks. Like, as much as we joke about the infamous snake shot, like, while you don't want to go that far with your sports anime,
we do remember the snake shot.
But yes, we remember the snake shot for a reason, and so gimmicks are not a bad thing in sports anime as long as they are used, you know, judiciously. And I think that's what episode 6 does a good job of. I think episode 7, I think what we just keep saying is it kind of falls apart because it's just the context of Maki, like, because again, it also begins to take away, and I think they get into this in episode 7, is that it begins to take away agency from Toma, right? Like, it took Maki to figure out, like, yes, I've deduced their weaknesses.
Right.
And it's like, Toma, who's ostensibly like loves the sport and has been doing it for a while, like the fact that he is still like being led by Maki to these conclusions, like just makes him like I don't know, seem like an idiot, I guess.
This may be like an unpopular opinion, but like I think I'm ready to drop this show. I know we're already at episode 7, but it's really just not doing enough for me.
I'm not at that point yet. I still think the character stuff is pretty solid. I think it's just
let's actually get to that because
we get to that in episode 7. Yes,
the back half of episode 7, the one thing they do try to subvert the I guess the sport, the cliche here is they have the ace guy from the other team kind of crash their barbecue, and he turns out he's kind of an idiot and kind of hot-headed, but maybe he's not that bad of a guy, and he goes and hangs out with them.
Right.
And again, when it's just the characters like hanging out and stuff, that's when this show is like at its best, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I mean that part was pretty fun, and I think that was their almost blatant attempt to try to like subvert the cliche, even if it's
I guess that's the
not
problem
like
is
a
like
huge thing.
I mean I wouldn't call it a subversion, and more just a good execution of that classic trope, because if you look at a lot of sports manga and anime, like usually one of the first additions to like the main character team's crew is the like rival, one of the early rivals they beat or almost beat, who then becomes like a hot-blooded local buddy for them to like hang out with.
Right.
And so I wouldn't necessarily say they're subverting things there. In fact, the thing I would say,
the method,
yes,
maybe not the concept, but the method felt
yes,
a little bit different than what usually happens.
The thing I would say that gets subverted, or maybe begins to interest me again, is the part where Toma is eating by himself during the barbecue, and he admits to the other guy, like, it feels like I don't belong here anymore, almost, right? Like,
right.
He doesn't say it out loud, but he's almost admitting that, like, in some ways, Maki is beginning to supplant his position as, like, the de facto kind of leader of the crew.
Right.
And I don't know, like, I'm curious where that'll go, because I feel like Maki and Toma's relationship was very much solidified with, like, the whole, like, confronting Maki's father thing, but now we have this moment here where I'm not saying Toma is regretting that, but Toma's kind of like wondering.
There's some conflicted feelings.
Yeah, there are conflicted feelings there for sure. Definitely some conflicted feelings, and I think that makes things interesting, even if maybe some of the context and events around it are not working for me as well.
Do you think we're ever going to get anything like meaningful from the girl? Like, it seems like every episode they just have to devote a minute clip to her being like, "Oh, I'm here even though I'm acting all tsundere." Like, I
mean, I think they were building up to Mitsue doing something for the plot, because they definitely keep
some kind of implication with, I don't know if that was supposed to mean something when they were like, "Oh, you hardly ever eat during, lunch normally." Like, is she going to have her own tragic backstory?
Well,
they're gonna...
It just seems like she's generally like nerdy and being ostracized.
Right, she is isolated, she is ostracized by her peers, right, and maybe that has led to, like, the personality she has currently. I mean, they're definitely gesturing towards those things. I hope it is not too dramatic. I think that if they introduce even one more, like, tragic backstory, like, to this plot, I'm not sure I'll be able to handle that. But...
I don't know, man.
Yeah. I mean, with like I said last time, like, everybody has problems, so like we could have more like problems, but like when we get to like the real hard, like, abusive stuff and all that, like we have enough of that we haven't even addressed that. We don't need to introduce more. So
right,
there's still quite a few loose ends to tie up. We've never gotten anything on Toma's mom or stepmom or whatever's happening over there.
Right, like, we're halfway through. They got to start like tying up some of these plot lines.
We had we had last time when they just randomly brought up the student council president and her thing.
Right, shit, that was a thing.
We never they opened that book and we never went anywhere with that.
Is this based on anything? Is this original?
No, this is an anime
like,
original.
Yeah, that thing with the president almost made me think of it just being like based on a manga where they're like, oh, this manga had a chapter just devoted to her, and so they just
save that for the segue to Beastars.
Right, if we want to talk about anime that does an amazing job of introducing what was an incidental filler chapter of the source material.
Oh yeah, that was really good.
Let's talk about Beastars.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was episode 7 though, not episode 6. But
yeah, but oh well. It's it.
We can transition to that. I don't think we have too much more to say on Stars Align at this point. But Beastars is real good.
Oh yes.
Still enjoying it.
I was so wrong about the panda.
I didn't say a thing.
I know you couldn't say a thing.
Yeah.
I'm on tape.
Is there anything this show can't do? I feel like we cover so many different areas in these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And based on what you've been implying, G, I feel like maybe there are many more areas to cover to come. But
perhaps
we'll start with episode 6.
Yes.
They go to the black market.
Which has our boys heading to town for an episode.
Yeah, the city for the first time.
Lugosi says he hasn't been outside of the school in a full year.
It's a boarding school.
Yeah. I know, but like, even Harry Potter goes to Hogsmeade.
I think the implication wasn't that he couldn't. It wasn't that he couldn't go. It's just he doesn't like going.
I'm saying that he has not done so personally.
Yeah,
the show doesn't exactly say that his life choices up to this point have been very healthy.
Lugosi has his reasons.
Yeah. Anyway, they go to town.
Yeah.
And there's birds.
What starts as
I always just assumed that because they're all human sized, they're just grounded.
Get your flying license.
Well, no, Marlon. As they explained, you can't apply for your flying license until you graduate high school.
Right. Duh. What was I thinking?
I even even think to include eagles and the carnivores. But
I like that
makes sense. Boys go to town. Seems like a normal, let's go to town with our friends episode until they discover.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good even before they get to the black market, there's a good very what's the word? Very believable set of interactions of just a bunch of high school boys hanging out. You can totally imagine
talking about the stripes on the ass of his girlfriend.
Right.
Just
as a tiger, I only fuck striped animals.
Well, I mean, but you get what I mean, right? Of these high school boys have been given an excuse to get off the leash for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they're gonna take a stop at McDonald's and
talk about girls.
Girls and fucking rib your friends. I can smell the virgin on you and all that, right? And remember, this is Bill, the guy that Lugosi was savagely beating 2 episodes ago.
Right.
It's they're already back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yes, that gives way to a bit of a turn in the back half of the episode.
That was intense.
Where the boys discover the black market that Lewis warned them, right? He said, "Don't go to the."
Of course, black market. Of course, a fucking cop like Lewis would say that. So
yes, but this is of course where the carnivores can get meat if they so desire.
Oh yes,
this leads to various conflicts among the boys because Bill's ready to bite the finger off that old beggar man.
Yeah.
And
so I'm a little confused.
That was so
that was so intense. Is it illegal? Because it seems super obvious where it is.
They call it the black market.
I think I took it as it's technically illegal, but
the police turns a blind eye for
a not enforced. At least not in this particular situation.
Maybe for the sake of social cohesion or whatever.
Right.
We're just gonna...
Right.
But yeah, having that goat guy just be like, want a finger? Having the strings with the prices. That was just...
it's a great moment. It really,
some, real fast, whoa, whoa, whoa!
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad you guys have been enjoying Beastars up until now, but I would say that the introduction of the black market is where Beastars really starts to kind of pull back the curtain and be like, "Oh, you thought this was about a play? Huh? Well, let me tell you what Beastars is really about."
So this is a dumb thing that I thought was that maybe only I thought was funny, but like when Lagos is running through the black market and it's this like montage of various cuts of meat or whatever, and it's like,
yes,
here's like meat, and then here's this like shawarma. I don't know, and I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah, like one of those old-fashioned movies having the signs flashing on the screen as the character's running.
There's like a piece of meat, and then there's this like prepared meat. I don't know, like in my head.
No, I get
my
you.
head
I
is
must
just different. You know, like
some mutton from the morgue, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, you know, it's a difference between like.
I don't even know how you make shawarma.
There's a difference between like a whole chicken versus like a fried drumstick or something.
No, I get you, man. I get you. Yes, it's.
Yeah.
But...
it just continues to be interesting because like you can't quite make a real world allegory to this.
Yeah.
Because like it's not like we found a black market where where it was cannibalism or something like that, but.
It's not cannibalism.
It's kind of in that neighborhood, right?
And that's what I say when I was trying to, like, you know, kind of hint to you guys that Beastars could be taken as a racial allegory, but you really shouldn't approach it in that way because it is not dealing in those, right? Like, there are many things in Beastars that simply do not have an allegory to our own society. It's more that Beastars has many of the trappings of our society, but recontextualized in very...
Right.
Unexpected
it puts it
ways.
in a way that, like, if we were in that situation, maybe this is how we would handle it, and maybe we should think about that.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Which is very interesting.
And then Panda shows up, and I was way off the fucking mark. This whole time.
The Panda black market doctor.
You know, I had assumed at the time this was a school show, and so I thought this panda would be within a school context.
What, and you didn't think it was going to be vegan Kiryu Kazuma with a medical degree?
Oh, it's so good.
It is a nice
choice. So he meets the shady back alley panda doctor who has a very black and white view on carnivores here.
And specifically, he specializes in treating carnivores who that he believes have given into the meat lust.
Right.
Like,
and I do like this idea that, like, you know, he's a bear, but an herbivore bear, so it's like he's in between the worlds.
In a world of carnivores and herbivores, the panda is particularly weird and unique, I guess. Because, like, they're still bears, right? Like,
right, yeah.
Yes.
Well, they can eat meat, right? Like, wasn't he would...
Like,
right,
they're
like,
capable
only
of doing
incidentally,
so.
like any other animals sometimes
Well, it's like if you feed it to them in captivity or something, they'll eat it and get nutrition
but, like,
from it.
Even their teeth are, like, you know, they're all square, like an herbivore's to crush bamboo.
I mean, as, you know, the doctor kind of hints at, I think the more the idea of him being a panda bear is he is an herbivore with the strength to deal with carnivores.
Right.
I love how his like psychotherapy room is also his gym.
Yeah, we get to and he has a very he picks up Lugosi, who like passes out from trying not to eat the meat or something or whatever. Yeah. The central overload of being around all that much.
I do like because we know that like Lugosi falling in love with a rabbit is like, oh, that's weird because he could eat her or whatever, but then having the panda like kind of say it straight out of like, that's fucked up, kid. We're gonna eat her, man.
He's explaining it as Lugosi mistaking his feelings of love for his instinct to eat the rabbit.
Right.
It literally eat the rabbit.
Right. He is convinced that, like, I mean, he says it. He says, like, you're not the first carnivore to come to me and claim they've fallen in love with an herbivore, only to be found later, like, eating them alive.
Right. So he's like, tell you what, you can take this bunny porn magazine. You tell me if you get off to this.
Yeah, that was where I was
like,
what a great
I've given you so
moment,
much
though.
faith.
Oh, but that was so funny.
It's such a good visual gag.
It is a good visual gag.
Fucking handing this fucking rabbit porno mag, just like here, kid, have a look at this. This'll cure what ails you.
Either you have either you're a carnivore or you just have a fucking rabbit fetish.
Makes me wonder, does he have like a filing cabinet where it's like alphabetized? It's like, where's my rabbit porn section?
He had that ready to go on demand.
Right.
He's a doctor, he's got to be prepared.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that episode. It raised a lot of interesting questions, which I'm sure will come into play later in the show, and kind of address some. These are all things I think were being implied earlier, but now we're kind of getting like the next level of exploration into those
also
particular questions.
I guess Bill and the mongoose dude just ate that finger.
Did they?
Did they confirm?
I don't know
if they actually went through it, because Lugosi does meet up with Eagle Guy later, and Eagle Guy couldn't go through with any of it, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's whether or not they had the money to do, because he was saying we got to pull together our money to buy this finger.
Bill absolutely would do it. I feel like, but we didn't see it.
I mean, I think the implication is less that it was a money thing and more like at least with Alba, the eagle. I mean. He says he got cold feet, right? Or like he couldn't bring himself to do that, especially when like he goes to school with herbivores, and like it's and I think it's meant to kind of represent that like even in this society, right? Like yes, some carnivores are like totally ready to make that social disconnect between this is a piece of meat and this was a person, but there are plenty of carnivores that are like that used to be like a sapient being in this society, and
Right.
I cannot jive with that.
I did find it interesting how Lugosi like focused on how, I forget the eagle's name, but Alba. His beak is still as sharp as it's ever been, whereas Lugosi trims his nails intentionally to kind of be like a manifestation of his repression. And how
are you gonna trim your beak?
I know, but it's just a kind of like symbolic that he needs to, he doesn't need to compromise who he is in order to prevent himself from doing these.
I mean, yes,
doing something that he might think is unforgivable.
Totally, there is definitely a latent thematic like element of Lugosi's character is that. I'm not going to go as far as say, he is like a parable of somebody being ashamed of their race, but more that Lugosi is deeply frightened of what he is physically capable of because of his body. And
right.
Maybe some issues of shame or anxiety that stem from that.
And is he overcompensating, which kind of touches into next episode, too, in other ways. But,
but first... get the side story.
But first, let's talk about eggs.
Yep.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. So episode 7 is a collection of wonderful things.
This is I'm so glad.
Probably, I think we were all saying it's probably the best episode so far.
I'm so glad they did not cut this chapter.
Was it? Well, yeah. So yeah, we start with kind of the cold open chapter of Lugosi's
Legom the hen.
Yeah. Legom the hen, yes. I couldn't remember her name.
It's because it's right next to
her
Lugosi.
whole.
Yes.
So, some more interesting question as to where eggs come from in this world, because we have seen them pop up, but
I'm a little disappointed they're not like person relative size eggs. They're not like a football.
Don't think about it too hard.
I don't want it.
Yeah, the less we think too hard, the less we dig into that, the better, probably. But the details are probably not something we want to dig into. But yeah, so apparently she's been selling her eggs as a part-time job, and she's been secretly pleased that Lugosi seems to really like her eggs, even though he doesn't know it. And I don't even know what's happening in this whole
it's really
sequence
good.
of events here, but it's really good.
Yeah, I mean. I love Beastars a lot for like its characters and its overarching plot, but it's also these sorts of incidental chapters are also like a really fantastic part of Beastars, and I'm so glad they kept it in because I feel like if you were going to cut a Beastars anime for time, like this is one of those chapters that would be the first to go because it contributes like nothing to the overarching plot.
Right.
But I think it's so important because it lays down more of the flavor of the Beastars setting.
I think what struck me kind of was like it's a really smart adaptation choice to put that before the opening.
Yeah, like just as a cold open,
because like the opening since it's a show that already like usually just starts immediately with the opening, putting that before allows
before we get back to the plot,
right? Allows it to be separate from the main plot, without being like, when is this going to be important later? Like having allowing the opening to happen after that lets you reset your brain, you know?
Right.
I mean, the directorial choices have continued to be
very good. Yeah,
really good. Really, like, I mean, you know, if we did the sort of like, you know, the anime awards for best directing, like, you know, best animator or whatever, like that's up for debate. But like, if we want something like best like visual, like directing and editing, like I think Beastars is definitely up there this year. Like, it's just so
bring back the 2012 awards we did.
Like, shot and framed,
yeah.
And now I can finally bring up that so the author of the manga, Paru Itagaki, she when she makes public appearances, she pulls a Yoko Taro, where she wears a mask. She is I mean, I'm sure.
Oh, and is this the mask? Is this the mask
yes,
she wears?
She wears a mask of Legam the Hen. She has admitted that Legam the Hen is herself in Beastars because just like Legam the Hen strives to make Legosi happy with her eggs, she too tries to write a story that is worthy of Legosi.
That's fantastic.
Shot of this chicken in a tracksuit.
It's just really like just some really good images that are just like they know that like they don't need to like add anything extra to make it funny. Just like the framing of this chicken like in a tracksuit like doing laps to stay healthy is funny in and of itself.
Right.
It is very well timed. Just so many things because like it gives us a little segue, it gives like a little breather from the heavy previous episode, and then like we're kind of back into somewhat lighter material in this episode anyway, and it was a nice little break to ease us into the the rest of the episode. But even after that we get the OP, but then. Shout out to that little animated sequence with Haru's monologue right after the OP.
Okay, that's not in the manga.
Do we know who did that?
Like that's anime original.
Huh.
Right. I don't know if we know who did that or they brought in a guest for that or something, because that was not CG, right? That was like
I mean, if it was, then wow, Orange has like some real motherfuckers in their stable. Yeah, but yeah, that was super impressive. Like, I feel bad for not looking up who did it, but it's like
I did a really quick search and didn't find, but I'm not as plugged into where you find those things. But it looked like that looked like the kind of thing you bring in a guest animator for this one sequence type of thing. It's like this really cool dream sequence thing over Haru's monologue as she's getting it on with Lewis here.
Right. I mean, yes, that is what the scene is going to.
Which we kind of kick off the episode with, just and
because
a lot of this episode is building up to exploring their relationship, having Legosi kind of find out something's going on, having Lewis kind of find out that, hey, why does Legosi know who Haru is?
Oh yes.
And setting up, and we get the cute wolf girl in the drama club to set up this like love parallelogram thing.
Right.
I don't know who to ship anymore. And yeah, it's all really good, kind of culminating in
I have kind of wondered, like,
fairly ominous final scene.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
With Legosi seeing Lewis just talking to Haru, and like the sight of it kind of inciting his jealousy or whatever.
Right. I mean, as we've seen before, Legosi is usually pretty like low key, and it's like episodes like the play and episodes like this where we begin to wonder if maybe Legosi isn't wrong to try and keep himself so restrained because,
like
I said,
things seem to
there
really
is a-
pop
is
off
he-
when he's being himself.
yes,
like I said, is he Dimitri from Fire Emblem? Does he have,
yeah. I mean, there's an aspect of Lugosi that's like, what if this dude just decided to fucking pop off? Like, what?
Yeah.
What could he be capable of doing to his peers? And
yeah, and it's like, whereas I feel like in previous moments we've kind of leaned towards saying, well, maybe Lugosi is overcompensating and he needs to open up a bit. Maybe we're starting to get the counterpoint of, oh, maybe he really does need to not take any chances and really pack that down. But you know, that's part of the interesting thing about his character, where I don't know if there is a definitive answer to that, at least not yet.
I do like that this is how they decided to explore the the quote unquote mystery of, does Lugosi love Haru, or is he just like hungry for her? And the fact that seeing her with Lewis evokes feelings of jealousy and hatred and anger perhaps prove that, yes, like, maybe in some ways those are the truest way to prove that you're in love with someone.
Right. And not the sorry, I skipped by just the porn magazine coming back into play in this episode.
We should bring that up. Yes, poor Jack.
Yeah.
Okay, that little flashback with Jack, like, I've known Lugosi all my life. Like, here have these flashbacks of little kid Lugosi picking up bugs off the ground, and
such a pure innocent boy.
Right.
now he's jacking it to bunnies. Where did I go wrong? What happened to my best friend?
I have kind of wondered,
Yeah,
if
Jack seems alright.
Jack's
Yeah.
alright.
The little bit we've seen of him.
but, like, scenes like this, and like with the scene with Haru and Lewis, if there's almost like, do you guys know much about Leda and the Swan? So it's this
you'll
story
have to
from
elaborate.
Greek mythology. Like, Leda is this beautiful woman, and just like Zeus
Oh, is the
normally
swan
does,
Zeus?
turns into a swan and
Right,
has sex
yes,
with her.
okay.
So like, even in the Renaissance times when they would make a lot of nude paintings, they would never depict actual sex between a man and a woman. But for some reason, because mythology was big, you could depict sex between Leda and a swan. And I'm wondering if there's almost kind of like the same thing here in Beastars, that like normally we would never see this kind of explicit like stuff in anime, or at least it's not very common, especially in
But
such
because it's a bunny
because
and
it's
a deer.
a bunny and a deer, if it's like kind of more.
Oh, I think it's because it's on Netflix.
Well, it could be because it's on
I mean,
Netflix.
his stuff is
Marlon
also
does-
in the Shonen magazine that the manga
Yeah, I
runs
mean-
in, right?
Yeah.
Right, Marlon does bring up a valid point that, like, Beastars, like, like, there are a lot of anime that could be described as sexy or sexual, but Beastars, I think, is one of the few, like, that you can legitimately say is about sex in a...
They're very open about it.
Right.
Like, there's no
Like,
dancing around.
I mean, like, Lugosi almost walks in right after Lewis and Haru have, like, obviously finished fucking.
Right.
And there's even that great scene afterwards where they're walking down the steps and, like, Lugosi is sniffing Lewis.
Yeah, and like how
Right,
much
and
the
like, you can
jealousy
tell
might be,
something is up.
because he really realizes what was going on. Like,
Yeah, but...
You smell like sex and bunnies.
Right.
Maybe that's our episode title. I don't know, but,
Meanwhile, like Juno over here is all over Lugosi.
right.
I mean, yes, Juno continues to be the platonic ideal of the perfect, pure-blooded wolf girlfriend.
right.
I do love how they've been using like the animals' ears and things like that to convey their emotions, and how, like you can kind of see that with the way Lugosi uses his ears with Haru compared with her. Like he'll usually be like more like, what's the word? He'll usually have him down more, whereas he's more attentive with Haru.
Oh, yeah. No, I get what you mean. Like, using the body language to communicate the relationship.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the directorial choices here
Yeah.
are just there's so many good choices.
Yeah, well-
The split screen dialogue we
Yes.
talked about last time works really well. Yeah, just and we're set up to where like I said, the ending of this episode feels pretty omonous. I don't know what's going to happen next.
I'm curious. I'm curious if you guys have any speculation
is Lewis going to get the fist fight with Lugosi that he's been wanting?
I don't know about that. I feel like
shirts off and fight on top of Metal Gear. Fight on top of this dinosaur that we built.
Yeah. Yes. Is that how this ends? Right. I mean, that's the thing.
I can't imagine, like something. It feels like something bad is going to happen. I don't know what yet. I mean, and it's interesting because I do feel like Lewis and Lugosi have been portrayed as kind of frenemies, I guess, up to now. But are they going to work this out, or is somebody going to get murdered? I don't know.
And I mean, let's not forget there was a murder. Still an unsolved murder on campus.
Yes,
and
that's still out there.
Now the black market has been introduced, and the panda doctor didn't show up in episode 7. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Beastars does a lot of things, and I'm really looking forward to and even as somebody who read the manga, I don't remember every plot beat for beat. As soon as they show up, I remember again, oh, right, this is where such and such happens. But, if you told me to tell you, right now what happens next episode, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. And it's been fun just kind of rewatching these events again.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see where that goes next time.
Yeah, and speaking of things that we're sort of rewatching...
Yeah, so we'll wrap things up again with our Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
We're leaking into the main podcast again.
But that's because we're talking about...
This is my excuse. This is my legitimate excuse to talk about it.
Yeah, we're talking about a currently airing anime, Legend of the Galactic Heroes DNT.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I don't know if I really truly realized watching the original OVA how convenient it was that both sides had their civil war at the same time.
That's why. Right, though half the point is that it was
right. That's literally what Reinhardt goes through the trouble of engineering.
Right, and I understand that was intentional, but yeah, plot wise, it's very convenient, and it seemed more obvious to me in this week's block of episodes here, because episode 20 was kind of the tail end of the Empire side of it with the Westerland incident, and of course episode 21 is the end of the FPA side. But episode 20, in both cases, plot wise, I mean, obviously is pretty much the same as what happened in the OVA. A couple of things I would found interesting in 20 when the Westerland incident happens. That's a huge moment.
Yeah,
and one of the biggest things that kind of defined our opinion on Reinhardt.
Yes,
right?
And I would go as far as say that while there is less screen time spent on it, I might almost prefer DNT's portrayal of the Westerland incident.
There's less time spent on Reinhardt, on building up Reinhardt, because in OVA he's waffles about it and such, and we were told in the comments that in the novels he agrees to it, and I think this reflects that more closely.
I think it's interesting because in this version they never actually I don't think they actually have him say the words, but they imply
they
that
definitely leave it in a
whereas in the OVA they spend more time. He's like, oh, well, give me an hour to think about it or something, and they kind of soften they make it more look like he was being indecisive, which is, I guess you could say,
not
technically
very
Reinhardt-ish. It's not very Reinhardt-ish, but also technically less bad than explicitly saying, do it.
The biggest difference I would say is that the OVA in hindsight goes through a lot of pains to it really drags
make him less
that
culpable
out to show. Right, to show, Reinhardt's really concerned about this. He's really thinking on it. No, Reinhardt's not complicit. It's just mean old Oberstein and his, manipulations of Reinhardt.
Right.
Whereas the OVA makes it... I mean, not the OVA. The DNT, again, even though DNT does not literally have Reinhardt say out loud, let these innocent civilians get nuked to death, they leave the scene making it very apparent that Reinhardt...
The look on his face is saying... all right, we got to do this.
That he approves the action, and not only that he approves it, but he is far more explicitly complicit in it. And I mean, just to give some context for people who are listening, the Westerland incident is basically Reinhardt is kicking the shit out of the Lipstadt League, the rebelling nobles. Like, I gotta say, if there's anything I learned from D&T, or D&T helped me remember, is
how fucking bad the Empire used to be.
Right, like how the true low point the Empire was at before Reinhardt came around. Like we always talk about how annoying it is that FPA commanders that aren't Yang Wen Li or Dusty are or Bukok are frustratingly incompetent, stubborn, and thick-headed about how to save this goddamn nation. But compared to the FPA,
they don't shoot their own guys, at least.
Right, the noble leadership of the Empire is they are delusionally bad, right? Mm-hmm. They are so bad that they can't even tell when they're losing.
Right.
It's
or are
we're not losing, we're actually winning.
Right, how delusional do you have to be to their incompetence is on a whole nother level. And it makes me remember, okay, maybe it's because we were not as familiar with the setting at the time, but, the Empire was easily as much on the verge of collapse as the FPA was at the beginning of the show. It's just that the Empire got lucky with Reinhardt, and the FPA didn't, essentially.
Right. But yes, basically, for anyone not watching or not familiar, Reinhardt is presented with the classic, do you kill 1 million people to theoretically save, hundreds of million people?
Right.
Or do you, stop this incident right now? And he essentially decides to sacrifice
let's not let all these non-combatants die.
Right, these are explicitly non-combatants, civilians. Yes. He's not, again, he is not pulling the trigger, but if we want to go the whole trolley problem thing, he is at least complicit by allowing it to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I think this works better because I think it is very easy in the original OVA to write off a lot of Reinhardt's biggest failings as oh, the problem with Reinhardt is just he cares too much. But I think D&T does a better job. Actually, no, Reinhardt's path to kingship was always paved in the blood of innocence. And
see, I'm not defending Reinhardt. I just find it more interesting when they try to, I'm not going to say justify, but when they try to explore, his feelings on it more, I guess. Because I mean, he's again, I'm not saying he's not to blame for this incident. Just that, the fact that it would be a hard decision for him to make. Seeing that, I think it makes it more interesting than just him making the cold, hard decision.
Right.
Either way, it's he's still the one responsible for it, but I do find it more interesting when we have a little more context to it. But this is probably the more expedient way to basically get to the same result, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I feel like everything else pretty much panned out.
Yeah, it was mostly the same otherwise, I feel.
Yes.
And that they kind of end with Kirky Ice learning about the news and him preparing to have to confront Reinhardt on it.
Yes, there is a reckoning coming for Reinhardt.
We know. Yeah, we'll talk more about Kirky. I'm sure we'll have more to say about Kirky Eyes next time.
We will have plenty to say about Kirky Eyes. I assume if the next 2 episodes go as I expect in the next podcast of the GLORIO Chat.
Yeah.
So
there's no way it's actually going to go the way it did in the OVA.
I hope it does.
I hope it goes exactly the way it went in the OVA.
Yeah, we'll
see how big
Braunschweig
is in this version. There's plenty of room.
True enough.
Oh yeah, Braunschweig's a big man in this. He's got a big body with big guts.
That's true.
I
you could hide it in his
hair.
hair.
A lot of guts, honestly.
You could fit a lot in Braunschweig's body this time around.
All right. So episode 21 is the flip side,
yes,
with the coup going on at with the FPA, which is pretty much at its end because they're cornered on Heinesen.
Yang throws some rocks at the Artemis necklace.
Yes,
yeah.
Yang continues the grand old strategy of hucking rocks at his enemies.
Yes. As inspired by which inspired by Ali Heinesen, despite this having nothing to do with what Heinesen did.
No, but I mean, I feel like this was in the same place. This is the same place in the OVA where they also brought up the Ali Heinesen flashback.
Yeah,
right?
Again, it's all pretty much the same as what happened. It's funny reliving it, I guess. What would win this super advanced defense network of satellites or ice cubes with rockets strapped to them?
Right, yes, I mean that is meme material right there. Yeah, yes.
I will say the Artemis necklace looks a lot cooler in D&T, as is usually the case with a lot of
the freaking Clockwork Sun.
Yeah, some shouts, sunless skies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will. Let's see.
It was the Boris Konev scene, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we're gonna talk about things that are new about D&T, I think the Boris Konev scene was actually pretty effective.
Right.
For those who need context, Boris Konev is a Phazani merchant smuggler of sorts, and he had just finished smuggling some Earth cult pilgrims to Heinesen, who we see quite prominently when, tragically, Job Trunicht is revealed to be alive and well after the NSMC are dismantled. And Admiral Greenhill is killed by a lynch. And
right.
Boris Konev meets with none other than the Phazan patriarch himself, Adrian Rubinsky, and is given the task of spying on the FPA. And up until now, the few scenes we had been shown of Boris Konev gave off a very, sort of James Bondish vibe. He's very sleek, hair swept back, wearing a suit vest
very
and
businessman.
tie. Very businessman, very slick, almost again too slick for Boris Konev.
Mm-hmm.
Until he is alone in a room with Marinesk, and he's bringing in some what looks like Chinese takeout,
right? Like fried rice or something. It's just like
fantastic
fuck
scene
this!
where Konev is like, "Man, fuck this! They want me to spy on my best friend." Did you know that in the Konev family, we have never had either a bureaucrat or a spy
or
in our
criminal.
family? Or it was a bureaucrat or a criminal in our family, and now they want me to be a spy, which is basically both.
Yeah.
And
That's a really good scene.
Okay, that's
pretty good.
That's pretty good. And the way that line is written is so specific to the way Legend of Galactic Heroes carries itself that I almost feel like that must have been from the original novels, and
right.
was just tragically cut from the OVA. But I'm glad D&T brought that line back because it's really good and immediately endeared me back to Boris Konev again.
It's interesting because in the OVA, when this scene happens, it's basically Boris Konev just saying, they want me to spy on Nangwen Lee, and then we move on. And so, not to get too much into the OVA, but I was unsure about Boris Konev's character for a long time because of that scene. But I think if this makes it a lot clearer that he has no intention of spying on Yang Wen-li.
Right, because in the original OVA, we were never shown Boris Konev actually, sending Rubinsky any, valuable information. And so for the longest time, we were just when's Boris Konev going to make his move? Isn't he still a spy?
Right. But here, it's a lot more clearer that he wants nothing to do with this shit.
Right. So yeah, I think that scene was definitely an improvement. The rest of it is definitely kind of the same old. Yes, Yang throwing rocks, that one NSMC guy being
him trying to
guilt trip
justify,
Yang.
right,
and then,
trying to guilt trip Yang.
Yang being no, Bob, you are the autocracy.
I guess Greenhill dying was basically functionally the same.
Yes, basically the same. Greenhill continues to either be too slow on the draw or have really bad aim because, look, right. I thought I liked Greenhill, but rewatching these things in D&T reminds me that Greenhill seemed like a nice enough guy, but he was not as competent or intelligent as maybe we all wished he had been, because
right.
Like, we like Greenhill because he's Frederica's dad, but, like, in retrospect,
being a nice guy doesn't make you a good military commander or give you the ability to take it on a coup.
Always kind of a chump, like...
Right.
Like, he got played by Reinhardt, he got played by Lynch, he basically got played by Job Trunit, like, he got played by Yang.
The ultimate insult.
I mean, is he kind of, skipping ahead here, is he kind of like Hilda's dad, where he's like a nice guy but doesn't really...
Hilda's dad's smart enough to know, and
right.
Yeah, I guess he's been proven to be pretty competent.
Way more competent in the sense that, like, Hilda's dad recognizes
fully aware of his own incompetence.
Right, he is aware of how far his limited skill set will take him. And
right,
he knows
his limitations. Right.
Whereas, like, Greenhill got tricked into thinking like he had what it took to, like, lead a nation when.
Yeah,
I don't know, poor guy. Like, I mean, poor guy. On the other hand, fuck the dude for starting a fascist rebellion, but
right. Yes,
know,
let's not forget that part of it. But yeah,
dude maybe did not deserve to go out the way he did.
I'm gonna shout out Chunky Landsberg. His redesign is hilarious to me.
Oh my god, fucking the new Landsberg, the new bungling poet in.
Oh yeah.
He is. Forget Braunschweig, you could fit a lot in the new Landsberg shit. Like, you know why what happens to Erwin Josef in this OVA happens? Is because fucking Landsberg keeps eating all the goddamn food.
Fucking Christ.
Yeah.
It's hogging all the food, man.
I wonder
Jesus.
what the inspiration is.
Holy
like,
shit.
Because it is.
Maybe they just want to mix it up instead of
I guess. Like, it's a thing of, like, I could still see the Landsberg in D&T being the Landsberg we eventually end up with. It's just like the original Landsberg is like he's foppish in a way that's like, oh right, this is why we call him the bungling poet, because like he has like delusions of self-importance.
Right.
Whereas like this Landsberg is almost like, I don't know.
Comes off more of like a nerd.
Comically oafish.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, maybe that's perfect. Because again, they're keeping this Landsberg design. We're gonna get to see this guy a lot in season 2, and that's gonna be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's kind of funny until it gets very unfunny in season 4. But you know,
anyway.
what I mean?
We got a long time before we get to that.
Yeah.
I know.
All right. Well, I still overall am not really wild about D&T, but
understandable.
There are some good and bad. I do find it interesting. I've been kind of watching the. I don't normally read the comments, but I've been watching some of the Crunchyroll comments, and don't read the comments on episode 20 because you're going to get a lot of trolley problem defenses. But in general, it's been interesting to see some people saying like, "This show's awesome. I should probably go check out the old."
Yes, you should. Also, listen to our podcast,
OVA.
The Legend of the GLORIO Heroes.
So
yes,
I don't know what Crunchyroll's terms of services are about plugging your podcasts on their comments section, but maybe I should drop a link or something.
Hang out with VRV, right? Or Dive.
I don't know, maybe. But yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, if D&T does what it did for me and for me and Eero, and then eventually you guys as well, like, then
spread the gospel one way or the other.
Then in essence, it has done its job. Think. And
this is the cool youth minister who is touching base with the kids and getting them into
the Earth cult,
the source material.
Hey kids, remember our motherland, Earth?
Oh, Terra in my hand, Terra in my heart.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this episode.
It's got kids skateboarding on it.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Let's call it a podcast on that one and do our housekeeping. So check us out at theglorioblog.com. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean. We're also up on YouTube for now until they find some reason to take us off.
Until Kappa gets us.
Oh god.
Yeah.
We're talking about cartoons are for children.
Yeah, these are clearly cartoons for children.
Hey, look, as we all know, when Bittenfield stormed the Emmys, or was it the Grammys? Bittenfield said, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is for the children.
Gee, at least I understand what you're talking
about.
Thank you. And, yeah, so tell your friends, tell your enemies, I'm going to say that again, and, we'll catch everybody next time.
See you later.